Thank you for being here, Rosie. I'll go ahead and let you start. Rosie, we can't hear you. I'm not sure.
All right, is that better? Is that better? Can you hear me now? Okay. So I appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of the things that I've been doing in my classroom and the things that I've been learning in regard to UDL within this last year. Before last summer, I had no idea what UDL was, and it's been an amazing journey just using the technology and seeing how I can implement it within my classroom and reach every student and help them either learn to be learners or learn to excel as learners. If you take a look at the PDF that I have sent, the first 2 pages are exactly the same, so they just give you an overall picture of some of the things I'll be talking about in this presentation.
Rosie, can I stop you for just a second? I lost the PDF. Let me pull that up just a second. You can continue to talk, but as I pull up the your presentation. I apologize.
Okay. What do I want to share? I just enjoy the opportunity. I really enjoy teaching. I have not been teaching for a great number of years, and I've had a variety of teaching opportunities. Wanted to share a little bit more beyond just my ESL, because I know the goal of this webinar is to see how we can use UDL in all the classrooms across Kentucky. And so what I bring into my classroom is the fact that I've always been a high achiever, and I understand some of the challenges that students feel when they're put into groups, and yet group work is so dynamic. And so I look for ways that everyone within the group will be challenged and will look to use their strengths and overcome some of the weaknesses that they have in their classroom. The presentation's called UDL, the Internet and Classroom Technology, Positively Impacting Every High School Student. The Newcomer Academy presently has 350 6th to 10th grade students. They speak over 29 different languages. Within my classroom, I have 78 students who are 9th and 10th graders. They represent 18 different countries, and they speak 9 different languages. So there's quite a bit of diversity within our classrooms here at the Newcomer Academy. Melissa already shared my licensing and qualifications with you. So if you go ahead and look at the next slide, it's an overall picture, foundational ideas. What is it that we as educators need to keep in mind? The goal is that every student learns. I think that's been the big push from No Child Left Behind to the present Common Core standards that we have. So if you look at the pictures of the students in my class, what you'll notice is a variety. These are 9th and 10th graders. They range anywhere from age 14 to age 20. And like I mentioned before, they represent many different countries and many different languages. They also come from many different educational backgrounds. Some of them, I have 2 students they're 15, and their first year in formal education was last year when they came into the Newcomer Academy. So there's not a background and a history of successful academic progress. Other students come to us from countries where they were able to bribe their administrators for the grades that they received. And then we have students from a variety of countries who came from strong formal educational backgrounds. And so they bring all of that with them into the classroom. I wanted to share with you some of the guidelines for the Universal Design for Learning. The next slide talks about the multiple means of representation. There's basically 3 guidelines. In order to reach each learner, we need to provide multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression, and then multiple means of engagement. And as we hit those 3 guidelines, students are drawn into the educational experience They realize that they can be successful, and they realize that their uniqueness brings a uniqueness to the group and to the classroom that just positively impacts them for years to come. Some of the ideas within the multiple means of representation, and this is a lot of what we do within the Newcomer Academy, is to present material more than just reading from a printed text. We know that some learners are visual, some are auditory, and some are kinesthetic, and we try to integrate all of those. We have the smartboard technology, the document cameras, and our teacher laptops that come in handy for offering all those types of experiences with information. Since I'm a language arts teacher, kinesthetically, a lot of what I do is act out what it is I'm trying to get them to understand. So when we're doing action verbs, I'm really grateful that there aren't people recording me in the classroom, because I demonstrate to the students what those verbs mean, and they understand it because they hear it and they see it. We also try to clarify the vocabulary and the syntax and just the structure of the English language. As these students come in from other languages, some like the French and the Spanish have the cognates, but others from Asia and the African continent don't necessarily have those connections between our languages and theirs. So how can they find that information and have that information represented in a way that they can understand it? And then we try and transfer the information across the contents and across building from what they've known in their background, drawing them into this new information that they need. The second guideline is providing multiple means of action and expression. So how are they going to express to me that they have learned the material? How are they going to express to me that they're still struggling with parts of the material? And my favorite story in regard to that is a young man that I had this year. He decided in January he was old enough to not go to school and he was just going to get a job. And after trying that for a few weeks, he came back to school, but he felt very much behind. And he really did not like the computers and technology. And we were working on pamphlets. So he said, I do not want to work on the computer. And I thought, well, we can have different ways of expressing what we've learned. He's a great artist. So I took a piece of computer paper, folded it into a pamphlet, handed it to him, and said, here, you draw this picture that you got off the internet onto this page. And he looked at me like, wow, you're going to let me do this by hand. And he sat there the entire class period completely engaged in the activity he was doing, because I had given him something that he was familiar with, that he knew he would have a positive experience with that expression. I think the other key point in the area of action and expression is providing options for executive functions. There's been a lot of studies that I've seen through my college coursework that talk about the fact that if students' minds, if their available memory is so actively engaged in remembering and trying to understand the information that I'm giving them, they don't have the mental capability, because their memory is consumed, just like a computer memory, to be able to apply, analyze, and synthesize, and then create some kind of a finished product. So working to find ways for their actions and expressions to help them integrate that information and move from the remembering the lower forms of Bloom's taxonomy and being able to do those higher executive functions is just extremely positive for them. The last guideline is providing multiple means of engagement, and I think that's where the project that I did with my students was really effective. I need to find a way to recruit their interest, to cause them to be engaged and interested in the material that we're doing in the classroom, because this project was springboarded off of the text that we have normally used and we use throughout the year, and because it was an actual story, a nonfiction story, something that they could investigate and find out more about. Were really interested. They were really curious. They wanted to find out what they could about this woman. They wanted to find out what other groups had found out about this woman. And it also brought a measure of self-regulation, which I'll talk about that as I go through the presentation. Are there any questions about the UDL principles? I'll wait for the text box to open, see if there's any questions.
I have Yeah, I think you did a good job too, Rosie, but I had a question, not necessarily related to the principals, but how many, folks do you have in your district involved in UDL implementation?
Jana, can you answer that one? I know we have 3 here at the Newcomer Academy, but across the district, yes, Jana will let us know how many there are. Okay, 72 classroom teachers there. I know this year they made an emphasis to bring this into the ESL classrooms. They had other disciplines that they were focusing on in the other 2 cohorts.
So Jana, these are teachers across disciplines, right? I'm going to unmute you if you want to speak, Jana.
Thank you, because I'm not on my keyboard and I kept typing and it was spelling it wrong. We have 72 classrooms that we've impacted over the last 4 years. They are evenly distributed from elementary, middle, and high. The first year that we worked with 12 teachers that we began with, we kind of grouped them all together for all of the training, including going to Harvard to study with CAST on the UDL principles. We quickly realized that learning at elementary, middle, and high is very differentiated. So when we successfully received the grant from KDE that underwrote our next 2 years of UDL classroom teachers, we intentionally had work that was done at the elementary level and the middle school level and the high school level where they did collaborative events to look at the work. And then we brought everybody together. And we'll be continuing in that next year, next year we get to add 12 more classrooms because we've run out of the state funds, but we found other locations. So by next year we'll have 84 classrooms where teachers have spent at least 2 years studying the principles and how they apply in their classroom. And as Rosie said correctly, this year the high school team decided to focus in on English and language arts and ESL teachers because we saw some real promise with them. And that's all. Let's turn it back. I just couldn't type.
Thank you, Jana. I appreciate that. I knew she had more of those global pictures. Like I said, it's all been brand new to me, but just opened a whole new horizon that I've just enjoyed really being a part of the cohort, the community that's there, and the opportunity to share what we're doing in the classroom. So if you turn to the next page, the one that's titled Hampton Brown Edge Fundamental, I'll start talking about actually the project that I did with my students. This was actually the first unit, so back in probably September, October, and the essential question was, who am I? So we're looking at what makes us unique, what makes us important, what makes us different, what makes us the same. And within our curriculum, we have this picture of this young lady, which many of you will recognize from National Geographic. She was the cover girl on National Geographic during the Afghanistan war. And they didn't know who she was. The photographer had gone in, had snapped a bunch of pictures, and this was the one that was chosen for the cover of the magazine. So 17 years later, people were asking, well, who is she? So our textbook had a very short segment about her, and it was pretty much explaining how they identified her. They were able to find her, but how did they prove 17 years later that this is the same young woman? And they did it by the pattern of her eyes. And as I was looking at this unit, I thought, what a dynamic opportunity for my students to go to the internet and investigate who this person is, if this is really a true story. A lot of times, I think students of all ages, they think if something's in a book, it's got to be true. And I really strive to teach them to think critically. So I told them, I said, just because this is in our textbook does not necessarily mean that this is accurate. So let's go ahead and do an investigation and find out about this young lady and what has happened to her since then. So if you go to the next page, I have the challenge for my students. I called it a truth scene investigation, kind of modeled after the crime scene investigation. And they were to go to the internet and decide, is this a fictional story or is it nonfiction? And then who is she? We know her name's Sharbat Gula. And they were to become a detective. So we were told that Sharbat Gula is the girl in this photo, but how do we know she really existed and that this really happened? They needed to investigate to discover the truth. Because this was the beginning of the year, and I really do it throughout the year, I found a program a couple of years ago that lets me put the students' names into the program, and it randomizes groups for me. So I did that with this group. They were put into groups of 3. I think one group had 4. But I'm intentionally building community and cooperative skills. And also what I found helps the students to rise to positions of leadership. If you let them choose their own groups, oftentimes at the high school level, they'll get into the same group every time. Maybe it's within the same language, maybe it's the same ability group. But by randomizing it, they were forced to find out what their strengths and weaknesses were within the group and to come up with a final product that would be acceptable and that would show that they had learned something. So I really enjoyed that aspect of this project. As far as the actual investigation, if you turn to the next page, I titled that Investigating the Evidence. And here's where I brought in a lot of what we do in the English Language Arts curriculum here at the Newcomer Academy. I talked about credible sources. Not only do students often look at a textbook and say, okay, this is a book in school, it's all got to be, 100% accurate, but they also think that everything on the internet is accurate. So we talked about what makes for a credible source. And you see on there, I put not Wikipedia. All of my professors who are experts in their field say that not all of the information that is there is accurate. So I don't allow my students to use Wikipedia to find information from the internet. I also informed them, because of the multiple means of representation of material, there were several YouTube videos about Sharbat Gula, so I did not tell them where to go. I just said go to YouTube and find some videos and watch them about her. And this is where the technology, the integration of technology was extremely effective. I had headphones, which I had gotten from the UDL cohort, and a headphone splitter. So I gave the students a student laptop. They had their groups of 3. I didn't have enough of the splitters for each of the group at the same time to listen to the YouTube videos, but they could put the video on and then corporately watch it together as a group, which helped them. They interacted as far as rewinding, watching it again, viewing the same thing at the same time. Then I instructed them that they were to open a Word document, and on that Word document they were to take notes of what they were learning and that they would need to produce a final project. So they needed to cite their sources. We talked about plagiarism and giving credit where credit is due for information. They were to answer their questions in their own words. They've become real fond of cutting and pasting with the computers. That's an extremely easy thing to do. And also using Google Translator, which is really effective for words or phrases. But when I found when they put sentences in there, the word order comes out jumbled. It doesn't accurately do the entire paragraph. So I encourage them to stay away from those types of things. And this is what their assignment was. They needed to find out what was happening in the world in 1985 and where was she living, where was this photo taken. They needed to list 10 facts about her. Notice the open-ended nature of the questions that I'm asking. I'm looking for a specific direction, but not a specific answer. I asked them to find out how she felt about being photographed, because that was unique to this story. What is she doing now? What does she now represent? And I clarified that by the question, what has she become the voice for? And then the final question, to stimulate some critical thinking, I asked them, well, who is making money from telling this story? And this is one of the questions that they were just very confused by, because they didn't understand the connection. When something's on the internet or in a text, people get paid money for those types of things. So that was a new thought for them as far as the investigation. The next slide, if you pull that up, is a picture of my students. The one group is watching the YouTube video, and the other group, you see, they decided that one laptop was not enough. They wanted to have 2. That way they could look at the information on one screen and record their responses and organize their ideas on the other laptop. So that worked out very effectively as far as the groups that we had and the work that they were doing. The one thing that I found with this project is that they were very uncomfortable with the level of independence that I gave them. I think that they are used to being given a specific assignment. You're looking for a specific project and a specific answer, and when I get that, then I'm done. And so the freedom that I gave them caused them a bit of confusion. And it took them a little while as groups, one, for a leader to emerge within that group, and two, for them to decide what course or what direction they were going to head in order to find this information out on the internet. And that was a fun thing as an educator, to just sit back and realize that I'd given them a completely new experience. They were engaged because they were left on their own, and they needed to do something, and then they needed to figure out what it was that they needed to do. So on the next screen, I have the expression, cracking the case. This is their final product. This is what they needed to produce. They could choose their form of expression, but I needed something to know what they had been doing with their time and what they had learned from this assignment. So I asked them to choose a graphic organizer. We'd used a couple of different ones in the classroom, and organize their information. That way they could present it in a logical fashion. And then I asked each group member to be in charge of one area of the investigation. They each needed to tell me what they learned. They needed to tell me why it was important to know those things. And they needed to choose their own form of expression. And once again, that was something that I could watch within the groups as they decided what kind of product did they want to produce. I gave them the instruction. They could do paragraphs, they could do illustrations, storyboard, or anything else that they could think of, and choose that as their expression. We had just begun to work with Edmodo. I was introduced to that last summer, and I find that a very effective tool, especially for my more proficient students. Edmodo allows you to make a class and put an assignment in there, and then the students are to upload their assignments, and I can grade it, and they can see their grade automatically. Because so many of our students don't have computers and technology at home, and they've come from countries where they don't have those opportunities, I always look for a variety of ways to give them exposure to the technology, to learn how to handle it, how to use it, so that when they go out to the comprehensive schools next year, we only have them for 1 year, they'll be a little bit more familiar with what they're being asked to do. So I did that with this project. You can see that on the bottom there. I just created an assignment and asked them, once they were done with their final expression, to go ahead and upload that into Edmodo for me, just as another mechanism for them to have exposure to the internet, the technology. The next screen, I believe, is the final screen that I have on the PDF, is the results. As I look through, the other thing I like about Edmodo is I have a permanent record, not in a file cabinet somewhere, but electronically, of the work that my students have done. So that's what I did. I went back and looked through the projects that they had turned in to find out which one that I wanted to put within this presentation. And if you just look overall at the page, you'll see a couple of things. One, they learned how to snip a photo from the internet. They learned how to put the border around it. So you have the picture there and the image with those haunting green eyes. You'll also notice the outline, numbered outline on the side of the URLs that the students use to find their information, and then down at the bottom are the bulleted points. So when I look at the overall page, I see some formatting that they've learned and that they chose how to present their information. They've got the URL that they've gotten the picture from and their information, and then they went ahead and given me some of the facts. The one thing that I learned from this project is that group projects take a little bit more time than I expected them to. I allowed them to have 2 days, which is 140 minutes on this project. I really couldn't allow them any more, and so the finished project is not quite as in the polished form that I thought it would be. But of course, I didn't penalize them for the lack of time and opportunity to put all those things together. So within this project, the multiple means of representation, they had the text, they had the video, and they had the websites that they could go to. They had the understanding of what a credible website would be. The multiple means of action and expression, they had the opportunity to choose for themselves as a group how they were going to proceed with this project and what kind of final project that they would turn in for a grade. And then also, I think the most dynamic part was the multiple means of engagement, because I actually had one student within this class, when he was put into a group with the other 2 students, he looked and he said, I am not working with those students. And this is early on in the school year, and sometimes we run into that. There's cultural issues, there's language issues, there's just personality issues. And so I simply told him, you have a choice. You work within this group, or you get a 0 for this project. And then I left and went to help with another group. And within about 10 minutes, he decided, okay, if those are my only two options, I guess I'm going to work with these students. So he became engaged because he was forced to be engaged, but I wasn't the one that put him in that group. Once again, it was a randomized program that had set him in that group. But I just really feel America is all about working together with different people. We do a lot of collaborative work in a lot of fields, not only in education, but out in jobs in the community, and students need to learn how to do that. The things that I discovered in this project were the importance of randomizing the groups, having that give them the opportunity to emerge as leaders. A lot of what I do in my classroom is setting the academic climate, and I know that that's very important. The expectations are clear. We're here to learn. We need to learn. We need to do the things that we need to do in order to learn. This is not a place where we're going to play. It's not a place where we're going to distract others. So that academic climate, which I think is new for some students, is something that I just feel is very important for my classroom. I talked about the freedom of choice. I gave the students choice, and within that choice, there would be a finished product that would demonstrate what they had learned. It was really fun to watch them enjoying being on the internet and using the technology and watching the video of this woman's life and what had happened with that. And then also the genuine learning that came from that. I think it's kind of the final component, the implications I was trying to think for the comprehensive diverse learners classroom. As we're looking to broaden UDL and not just use it within an ECE or ESL context, every class that I've taken at IUS, Indiana University Southeast, I'm in with teachers from all different disciplines and all different levels, and they all talk about the fact that some students are highly motivated to do well, and they will go above and beyond what you've asked them to do. Other students are that middle of the road, and we know it's not effective as educators to just teach to that middle group. And then we've also got those who struggle for various reasons, whether they feel like they can't learn, whether they've just been unsuccessful in the past, whatever those issues are. So finding a way for every student in the classroom to become engaged in learning, to be excited by learning, to be able to produce something that they're proud of, I think is a large component of what UDL does. And I appreciate the chance to talk with you and wondered if anyone has questions for me or for discussion. Okay, so Janet's asked me to describe my classroom technology. I have quite a bit in my classroom. This year's been, like I said, really exciting to me. I wrote a grant and was able to get some iPads, and those have been useful. I don't have the one-to-one, but I have 6 iPads at the moment and 2 of the Android Samsung tablets. I do have, our school has 4 portable computer carts with student laptops in them. There's 30 in the cart. Because I do a lot with the portfolio writing for the students, I get to keep one of those carts in my classroom. So I have those 30 student laptops most of the year that my students get to use. I mentioned the smart board technology that I use, interactive. Students can go up and respond to the content on the board and interact with that. I can write and model writing as they write. The document camera has been extremely effective. I love having students come up and present their work to the rest of the class. I try to build their speaking skills and their confidence as they present, and so that's something that I often do. Trying to think what else I have. That might be most of the technology that I have that I'm using within the classroom. I'm looking to integrate the iPads more and more, finding applications that work at the high school level. Right now I use them for those who struggle and those who finish early. No, I definitely did not need one-to-one for this project. That's one of the things that I was thinking, and implications for comprehensive classrooms or any classroom when I put the students in a group, I was able to use one laptop. I needed the headphones for everyone to share, but like I said, I only had 5 at the time and one splitter. So they shared the technology around from group to group and just patiently waited for their turn to use it. I think technology is the future, and I think it's just extremely essential that all of our students have the opportunity to try the different pieces of technology that are available and become more proficient, feel more comfortable with it, have the opportunity to experience. Yes, technology is definitely, that's where we're headed for the future. I'm not sure exactly the direction that it will take, and our students need to be comfortable. They need to, the beginning of the year, I really talked with my students about the fact that they need to be willing to try and to fail, because you're only expending effort beyond what you already know if you're trying new things that allow you to grow. And the only way to grow is to try what works and what doesn't work. And so I think that's very true with the technology. The ability to use the technology, the comfort of a teacher to allow the students to use the technology, knowing that sometimes it might get dropped or different things might happen with it, but it's in the classroom to be used. I think one other thing, too, also while we're waiting for Jenna's message to come through, is that what I discovered in my coursework for the computer education license is there is a whole lot of, there's a lot of applications for the iPads, for the Androids. There is a lot on the internet, and I think that's a challenge as an educator, is to find the materials, find the sites that are really dynamic for our students to use, because there is so much that's available. And that takes some time, but I think it's well worth the effort. Thank you, Jana, for that last message. Melissa, is there anything else from the state level that you would like me to talk about regarding the actual impact, you know, in the classrooms, the diversity across the state of Kentucky, the ability to carry this out? One of the things I don't know, I guess I did mention that the project could have taken some more time in order for a final project to be in a more polished state. So I think that's also the challenge for an educator, is how much can we do within the classroom and cover the content that we're expected to cover, especially at the high school level, or where we have high stakes in the 10th grade for the end of course exams and the other things that students need to achieve. But I feel like if we give them a handle on some of these principles, give them autonomy, let them figure out the ways that they can be successful in the academic climate, that's just extremely important.
I think as far as messages, you were asking about that at the state level. I think UDL and differentiation and personalized instruction are some of the words that we hear. It's part of the conversation statewide and nationally and globally, for that matter, that one path is no longer, that's no longer an option that we can give kids. We have to have multiple pathways for kids to be successful. So I think UDL really highlights a way to design instruction that gives multiple options for kids. And I think you've done a great job today showing how the different pathways to being successful and different ways for kids to be successful. And still, the outcome may be the same, but how we get there to that outcome may look different from student to student.
Right. That's one of the biggest things that I've seen. And I'm down to 2 students that I'm looking for that way to get them to help them realize that they are dynamic learners and they can be successful. I'm not sure what has been hindering them, but because our students come from such different places, and I really think even across the state, American students who have been raised here, they've come from different family situations, they've come from different experiences and opportunities that they've had in their life, but one of my goals is to just help each student realize that they are being successful. A lot of times they come and they want to see that A+ on their report card, on their assignments, and they don't get that right at first. But when I show them their small successes, they get excited, they get engaged, I see that time and time again, that they're looking at the overall grade maybe for the trimester, but if we bring it down to the homework assignments, we bring it down to project assignments, we bring it down to pointing out what their strengths are, it really engages them in the learning process, and they learn that it's not, there's not this one straight and narrow path, one direction, and everyone must be successful in that way with the printed knowledge that comes through. So I am looking at the message here. I don't know what SWD group is.
Students with disabilities.
Okay, thank you. Easily to the ESL, there's connections there, but I really see it as a unique opportunity for the creativity. All students are different, and what they enjoy is different. That's one of the other things that I saw within the group. As a leader would emerge and the other students would kind of look for that place within the group, they would kind of figure out more of really who they are and what they really enjoy doing. And I think setting that climate and having them have that opportunity, as opposed to when I was in high school, you sat in the chair and you listened to a lecture and you took notes, and when it was time for the test, you repeated back what the teacher had said. And the critical thinking that's a part of education now, the diversity that's just a part of our culture and part of our education systems, I think really prepares them well for the jobs that they're going to be taking in society, and for the ways that they're going to be interacting with people as they interact with others who are very different from themselves, and learn how to do that well and effectively. UDL brings that all about because there's just so much more different angles to present the material. In my classroom, we do a lot with the grammar, learning the structure of the language, but also literature, and both of those go hand in hand. And so different times for them to express in their own way what they're learning and what they still have yet to learn. So I would hope these ideas, I know at KISTI at the conference there were a couple people that came toward the end of the session and talked about the fact that they didn't have ESL students, but that they did have students who were struggling. They did have students who were not engaged, and I think the UDL is a way to cause those students to be engaged and to be successful in their educational pursuits. Don't know if anyone else has any other questions. Some of the things I've enjoyed about how JCPS has done UDL, and I don't know how the other districts are leading with UDL, but we had a technology library that I really appreciated. The high school teachers could check out various pieces of technology and try them out in the classroom. And really for me, it gave me the opportunity to see what will work well, what I can integrate well into my classroom, and the things that that really wouldn't work well within my classroom. And so I think that's the dynamic part of what JCPS has done, is offer that opportunity to have the technology and to use it without having to purchase it, only to discover that, no, it's not really going to work for me, or, wow, I bought this, but I really wish that I had had that. And so I think that that's something that JCPS has done really well in offering us the opportunity to try out the technology and see how it works, and then also to share with one another how we're using the technology within our classrooms. That's been a big part of the high school cohort this last year.
Rosie, do you have tech integration specialists or technology resource teachers who can help you think about, here's a lesson that I have, what are the technology supports that I could possibly use to match the learning experience? So the technology only supports the learning, it's not about the technology.
We don't here at the Newcomer Academy. We do have an IT person who does more of the keeping the technology in a functioning order so that we can use it. I don't know within the district if they have some. Our school's relatively small in comparison to the comprehensive schools, so I'm not sure if they have those types of resource teachers. And really what the UDL cohort has been, that's what they've been doing for me as an educator here at the Newcomer Academy. But beyond that, I've just been interested in bringing the technology into the classroom. And so that's why I attended and presented at the KISTI. That's why I did the computer education technology, because I really feel like it's a part of the education of the future. But I don't have anyone who really says, okay, you're doing this, this is how you can bring technology in to make that a more dynamic lesson. Yes, Pam and Lisa are, okay, she says we call them TRTs. And they have been the ones, they have run the high school cohort and done a really dynamic job. They've exposed us to what the technology can do in our meetings. We had a green screen, so if we wanted to use that, and they had us play with those technologies just to become more familiar. I think everyone understands that teachers have limited time. We have papers to grade, we have lessons to plan, we have a lot of students to manage, and so having the opportunity for somebody to show us some of the technology that's out there at district level has been beneficial.
Melissa, assuming you opened it up, and to the rest of the people on this, within Jefferson County, because of our size and stuff, a lot of times the acronyms used statewide do not resonate to our classroom teachers like Rosie. We have what you would call technology resource teachers. We call them education technology teachers just because we actually had them in place in advance. And our TRTs are actually the ones that are leading the work that we're doing at the district with UDL. So when Rosie has referred to when she gets together with the high school cohort that they're doing some sharing and some collaboration, and each level looks a little bit different, that actually is work with what the rest of the state would call a TRT. And because, again, we convolute everything, don't we, Rosie, in the district? But that is exactly what the role is. Our support of education technology are the individuals that Rosie's done such a wonderful job of giving accolades to, our Lisa and Pam on the high school level that have been working with the UDL cohort. And it looks a little bit different. The middle school cohort has done quite a bit with video-based lesson studies where they're peering into the classroom because classroom practice seemed to be where the need was needed, and Donna and Mary Beth have led that work. And then at the elementary level, they've looked at lesson design an awful lot, and Carolyn and Leanne. And all of those in the rest of the state would be called TRTs.
And I think, too, Melissa, just from the classroom perspective, just the opportunity, I think, I'm going to use an old phrase, thinking outside of the box. The idea that there are different ways to approach instruction, there's different ways to approach integration of technology. It's helped to broaden my perspective on the types of things. And I know there's a whole lot more. Next year I'll be a better educator than I was this year because I'm constantly looking for those opportunities that are out there. But UDL has just been an eye-opener in the aspect of, okay, now I can think what else is it that I can do within my classroom to find those things that work for the individual students that I have.
Okay, do we have any other questions before we wrap up today's session? Looks like we have a few people still with us. I was afraid that attendance would drastically drop at 4:30. A lot of folks, that's their quit time. So it looks like we don't have any more questions. And I just want to thank you so much for, I started to say volunteering to do this, but agreeing to do this. It's, I agree with Chris. This has been, excuse me, a great presentation, and we would love to have you back some other time, maybe to share some new things that your kids are doing. It's really great for those of us who may not always have a direct line to the classroom, since we're in different roles. It's really great to hear from classroom teachers and to see students. So this was a great opportunity for all of us, and we really appreciate all of the time and effort that you've put into this, Rosie. And thank you, Jana, for your support and your feedback during today's session. And I thank everyone who attended today, and for those out there who view the video.
Well, I thank you, Melissa, just for the opportunity to share some of the things that we're doing in the classroom here, and just the connection across the state. I think that's just a very dynamic opportunity. So thank you for the opportunity to share this with you and with others, and just appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hit the, I'm going to stop recording.